You've been waiting all week for that Saturday show. Tune in, see what happened, let your troubles go. Work real hard, now it's time to take it slow. Kick back and relax with that Saturday show.
Good morning, Albuquerque, and welcome to That Saturday Show. I'm your director, Tom Dent, and I'm actually sitting here with our host, Jim Harvey.
Good morning, Tom Dent.
Hi, Jim Harvey.
Good to have you here.
How are you today?
Oh, doing all right so far. It's Saturday morning, and it's That Saturday Show.
It's beautiful. We're past the time change. Have you adjusted to the time change?
No, not yet. I woke up this morning and I said, this doesn't feel right. I need to go back to bed, but I couldn't.
Well, this is kind of an impromptu show. We were supposed to have another show, but it'll probably be over before we know it, because that's how everything feels today with the hour change.
And with us having fun, it'll really go fast.
Let's hope so.
Right?
We got a lot of stuff planned for you. We got news clips coming up with you. We're going to talk about the Peace Center a little bit. So how was your weekend? How have things been going?
My weekend has been absolutely incredible, because yesterday I stayed home for a change on a Sunday and did absolutely nothing. I was in my PJs and my robe all day long, just me and the dogs and the cat. By the way, tell us, what is this scratch on your nose, Tom?
Well, it's from our tiny little calico cat, Chabelle, that we just got. That's a Terra knocking over plants, running all over the place. But she's absolutely cute, and we have Chabelle and our cattle dog, Nymeria, and our Basenji, Hanja.
I didn't know you had a Basenji. I love Basenjis.
Yeah, she's almost 90% Basenji.
Wow. Does she bark?
No, she kind of yodels and thinks she's a cat. What about your pets?
Oh, God. Well, my cat woke me up in the middle of the night last night because there was a cat out in the front yard. And so she just started hollering like crazy. And, of course, that set all my dogs off, and they all rushed in to see what was happening with her. And when she decided that she didn't have anything else to holler about, and she just sat down and looked at them as if to say, what are you all doing here? You know, then everybody went back to sleep. Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, you know, Jim and I both have podcasts. Jim has a bi-weekly show for the Peace Center called Journey to Peace and Justice, and my podcast is called Activist Community Podcast Albuquerque. And we were joking the other day that one of these days we have to do a podcast together, because I heard that there's this new podcast that's coming out. One of their hosts is a guy you might know. His name is Barack Obama. And the other host is Bruce Springsteen. And they bill it as a black man from Chicago and a white guy from a small town in New Jersey. So here we are.
So let's show them how it's done. That's what we'll do.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have a lot of fun today, hopefully, and be talking about a number of different issues. But right now, we're going to talk a little bit about the Peace Center. You know that Saturday show is produced by the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice. We just got our new old sign repainted and over our front door so people know exactly where we are now. We're at 202 Harvard Southeast. We've been trying to stay open during this pandemic. It hasn't been easy, but call us, come on down and visit us, volunteer with us. We just got, Jim's been with us since February of last year. He's our new executive director. He's very good. He's been putting together some pretty exciting initiatives, including this TV show. We've got a lot of things planned for our members and for the groups that belong to us. We have close to 50 Pajola groups, or groups that are members of the Peace Center. And we've been doing a little segment on the show that's called the Pajola Minute, and we're continuing to do that. I may have a once a month program for about 15 minutes that's going to be called Tom's Takes or something, but we'll insert that into the show. And we have a surprise coming up. We have a feature that we've had on a number of shows, and it may reappear on this show if we're lucky.
All right, let's hope so.
So, Jim, what's your feeling being at the Peace Center for close to a year, and what are your plans and what are you excited about coming up?
Well, the Peace Center has been just a perfect place for me to land after doing human rights and civil rights work for, wow, over 60 years. Yeah, still at it. And to walk into a place that is almost completely staffed with volunteers, you know, that have been there for a long time is really a very encouraging kind of feeling. And so I've just taken my cue from them in terms of things that have been happening there over the years. But we're looking now at bringing in some direct services as well. The Peace Center's been perfect and continues to be perfect as an umbrella for a lot of the other issues. Tom mentioned the Pajola groups, Pajola Peace and Justice Organizations Linking Arms. And they come together around a lot of exciting issues. They come together around water rights, environmental rights, human rights of all kinds, civil rights, racial justice, all kinds of social justice issues. They're there. Veterans for Peace. Tom's wearing a T-shirt from Veterans for Peace today, and that's probably one of our most dynamic and engaged organizations. During the election last November, people were concerned at the polling place that voters were being intimidated. And Vets for Peace got together and went out to the polling place and provided security for voters there. So those are the kind of organizations that we're working with. But as time goes on, we're looking at beginning to bring in things like introducing a resource center, so people can come and sit down and learn job hunting skills, or learn house hunting skills, or learn resume writing skills, search around different kinds of advocacy issues they may be faced with. In addition to that, we're going to have our restorative justice program, which I think is so important, conflict mediation. If we can begin to play a role in helping to tamp down the interpersonal conflict, and yes, sometimes even the interorganizational conflict that people face here in Albuquerque, we will have made a tremendous contribution. So we're just looking at some really, really dynamic and wonderful things happening going forward at the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice, and I'm just glad to be a part of it.
And we've got a lot of organization to do, a lot of real grassroots organization, especially in the state of the city right now, with pulling our city back up by its bootstraps economically, getting the kids back into school, hopefully safely, and with this mayoral election coming up, everybody's got to be organized. Everybody's got to be aware. And one thing that I know Jim has complained about on other shows is you can't just rest after a big presidential election. There's a lot of important stuff going on. You cannot lose the House or the Senate. So it's very important to vote in the 2022 election. It's very important to be aware that the mayor's race has just started in Albuquerque. Nick Bevins, a community activist, has just filed to run for mayor. As you know, Manny Gonzalez has filed to run for mayor. And I'm sure Tim Keller, with his new police chief, Harold Medina, will be filing any day. So it's important to be aware of this mayoral and city councilor election that's coming up this November. We've got to pay attention to that, and we'll be discussing that further on in the show. But now I think Jim wants to jump into a few news clips.
Just a few news clips for the day, and I think that I want to take a bent on what's happening nationally. Ron Johnson, what an idiot. What an idiot Senator Ron Johnson is. Ron Johnson had the nerve to go on television and tell people that he felt no fear at all on January 6th, and had the shoe been on the other foot, and Agent Orange had won the election, and the protesters outside had been Black Lives Matter, he would have been concerned. How racist can you be Ron Johnson, you need to resign and go back to Wisconsin, never to be heard from again. Well, on that, we've got some good news. And the good news is that grandparents and grandchildren are being reunited thanks to an increasingly aggressive vaccination program around the country. It just really feels good to see pictures of small grandchildren running into their grandparents' arms that they haven't seen in months or maybe even a whole year. And they've been forced to stay away thanks to the vaccinations. And you better get yours if you haven't gotten it yet. But thanks to the vaccination, grandparents and grandchildren are being reunited. That makes me feel good. Finally, border children. Over 4,200 unaccompanied children, minors, coming up from Central America looking for a better life. Their parents have sent them out of these war-torn countries that they live in and sent them hoping that they'd get taken into the United States and be reunited with relatives that may already be here. It's created a mess at the border, but Joe Biden is doing everything he possibly can to make a difference. So he's even dispatched FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, to help with the situation. And I'm just hopeful that in the coming weeks, we're going to see these kids placed in very humane situations, and more importantly, they're going to end up with their relatives and other family members across the country. It's just got to happen. The inhumanity that we experienced under Agent Orange and his administration, or I should say that criminal enterprise that he was running, it's just got to turn around. And the Biden administration is doing everything it can. We've got to help them. We've got to help them. And we've got to make certain that they continue to have the legislative power behind them that's necessary. So pay close attention to what's happening in national elections, but also pay close attention to your state and local elections, because a lot of stuff that needs to be decided on happens at those levels. You've got redistricting this year, and you've got all kinds of other challenges, and we want to make certain we want to make certain that nothing goes wrong, that nobody gets gerrymandered out of a district, that voting lines don't change so that minority populations, in particular black and brown populations, and communities that typically are progressive in nature, don't get districted out of existence so that they can't be as effective as they should be. And then our local elections, like I said, let's pay attention to those things, because what's happening in Washington, D.C. is going to need the full force of all of us around the country at all levels. So we've got a few minutes left here. And Tom, you want to add anything or weigh in on any of these particular subjects that I've shared?
Well, on the national level, a lot of these, there's a lot of good initiatives going on, but remember, a lot of this is going to take time. Like the kids on the border, we've got to reunite the kids, but I've heard that FEMA has to go in there, look at the logistics, look at the places where they can hold the kids, make sure that they're ready for what's the word for it? COVID renovated,
Right.
and so they're safe and healthy.
Right.
It's the same thing with the vaccinations. I haven't been vaccinated yet. My wife has been vaccinated twice. She's a director at the hospital. But what President Biden says, probably by around the 4th of July, most people will be vaccinated, and hopefully we'll turn the corner on the pandemic. And getting the kids into school is a really tough endeavor. Even here in Albuquerque, I've heard that we have a brand new superintendent of public schools. Is that right?
We do, and I've got some comments on that later on as well.
Okay, and I guess they had the ventilation and the classroom somewhat COVID ready, but we have a shortage of bus drivers right now. They're actively trying to hire bus drivers to actually get the kids to school. and other initiatives, like whether you want to call it the new Green Deal or the new infrastructure plan. That's going to take a while to get going, but once it does, it can really boost the economy and do a lot of things that this country has needed for a long time, like repairing our bridges and roads. We're way behind the rest of the world in internet and broadband. Our electrical grids have to be totally modernized and updated. Look what happened in Texas.
That's right.
They're dependent on their own grid, and their own grid failed on them. We've got a lot of stuff to do, and there's a lot of stuff that we have to do in Congress. I've heard that there's a very good ending gerrymander bill going through, and a human rights bill, but we've got to end the filibuster, well, it'd be a really good thing if we could end the electoral college.
Yeah, you're right. You mentioned the COVID relief bill. And the one thing that got left out, which I think is so important, and that is guaranteeing a decent minimum wage. And I'm just hoping that doesn't get lost in future legislative efforts. But we talked about the bus drivers, the school bus drivers, and someone from APS said that the school bus drivers, have elected to stay home in many instances because what they are receiving in COVID relief is more than they make as bus drivers. That tells me that they're not being paid a living wage. And so APS needs to look at what you're paying a school bus driver and ratchet that up and pay them a living wage so that they don't hesitate to come to work like they need to, because we need them.
Really, I thoroughly agree. I got so worked up about other issues that I forgot the minimum wage, and that should be the number one priority for everybody. It hasn't been for 40 years the minimum wage has been raised at all, and we're nowhere near competing with salaries with inflation and the higher cost of living.
Yeah.
So please, even though they may have taken this out of this huge stimulus bill, it has to be reintroduced and it has to be passed.
That's right. It has to. It has to. So let's take a look at this mayor's race and what's going on there. Is it finally heating up?
Well, it's just starting. People are just filing, but it's already heating up. I mean, the reaction in the activist community and with a lot of people I've talked to just about Tim Keller hiring Harold Medina as permanent police chief has got a lot of people's feathers ruffled. He has been implicated in the murder of a teen before. People were not happy the way he handled the Ken Ellis III situation and the Don Juan de Oñate protest situation. And on the other hand, you have Manny Gonzalez running for mayor, and his department has not been absolved in another number of questionable murders and police shootings. So who knows what we have here? It's like Tim Keller's started some really good programs. He's hired a new public safety director. It would be great to go along those lines. I really wish he had hired somebody from out of town like Sullivan from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So he could look at the entire hen house full of bad apples and hopefully wipe it out and fire certain officers that shouldn't be there. But I guess we have what we have right now. Like I said earlier, Nick Bevins, a young activist, is running. A lot of activist friends I know want to get behind him. He really wants to go into the more impoverished communities, help the homeless, and help Albuquerque pull itself up by its bootstraps and include everybody.
Yeah, everybody is right. You mentioned the candidate from Philadelphia. It would have been so wonderful to bring a breath of fresh air into this city. But it's like, I think the city is gripped in its own version of insanity.
It's the same cops being recycled, and
Yeah.
one thing that's kind of dangerous. This happened on a national level and a local level that the regular police forces and sheriff's departments have joined and a political action committee. There is one right here between Bernalillo County Sheriff and APD, and that, along with support from groups like the mega churches, can really sway the vote. So everybody has to get out there and vote, and everybody has to vote their conscience and try to make this a much more peaceful community with public service first, service for mental health and other drastic situations that social workers and counselors can handle, and not have the police rush in there not knowing what they're doing, and something glints like a cell phone or a lighter or a small knife or something like that, not put 21 bullet holes in the person that they're responding to.
Yeah, you know, I was talking about insanity. Is the definition of an insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. What is wrong with people in Albuquerque when it comes to turning away outside ideas, fresh ideas, new energy? You turn away a good police chief like the candidate from Philadelphia. You turn away good candidates for school board superintendent, and you end up with the same old stuff warmed over. You know, there's something, they have an aversion in this town to welcoming in fresh ideas from outside of the city. And it shouldn't take much in terms of being determined to try to bring in something new. Come on, our public school system, where do we rank? 49th, maybe sometimes 50th? That's not very healthy. And fresh ideas coming from people someplace else just might be the ticket to pulling us out of that hole. Instead, who have we got? We've got Scott Elders, who has working as the acting superintendent in Albuquerque Public Schools, and now he's got the job permanently. We can only hope that things get better.
Well, Jim, you know, we're getting worked up about things, but I'd really like every once in a while to look on the bright side, and we could really use some good news now.
I agree. I think it's really some good news that we need. I hope you all are ready, because after all we've been talking about, I think we need good news. Let's bring it on.
Hello, and welcome to Good News News. I'm your correspondent, Hassani Olujimi, and I'm Gugu for Good News. Now, the goal of this segment is to inspire and uplift you, the viewer, with nothing but good news. Let's jump right in. Our first story goes like this. Long-awaited hugs makes all the difference for long-term care residents. Recently vaccinated residents of assisted living facilities across the country are finally reuniting with their families. In Kansas City, Megan Miller finally gets to visit her 73-year-old mother, who moved into a long-term care facility after suffering a brain aneurysm and stroke. Megan said that it broke her heart not to be able to visit her mother during the pandemic. Also, window visits didn't work for her because her mother is legally blind. After months apart, seeing her mother face to face means the world to her. Megan also says, I just want to see her. I don't care what I have to do, even if it's just for 10 minutes. She's so thankful. See, I know we're getting closer to handshakes and hugs. Now, isn't that good news? All right, Megan and Mom. Now, our next story goes like this. You want to hear it? Here it goes. Volunteers in Texas saved thousands of sea turtles from shocking cold weather. Now, remember a few weeks ago, Texas really went through a debacle. Ted Cruz didn't help either. But I'm not going there. Here we go. Heroic efforts are being made in Texas by warm-blooded animals to save thousands of their cold-blooded neighbors who lack the ability to fend off the freezing temperatures. Volunteers at the Sea Turtle Incorporated Rehabilitation Center, what a mouthful, rescued over 4,900 sea turtles from death by cold stunning. Cold stunning is when turtles fall into a comatose state if the water falls below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. The community tried to help the turtles out of their comatose state by warming them in kiddie pools in the makeshift ICU. Isn't that sweet? Including one turtle that is 150 years old and weighs 400 pounds. Now that's a reality show I'd like to watch. 71-year-old retired professor and volunteer told the Washington Post this: very often, you don't think about the coal's effect on animals. We're so worried about our own electricity and water. This is a true and classic example of humanity towards animals. Extra, extra. SpaceX employees also got in on the act, and they rescued 1,000 more turtles just for the effort. Now, isn't that good news? I love it when humans help animals. It's a beautiful thing. Keep doing good work in Texas, despite your Ted Cruz issue. Now, before I go, I have a question for you. How did the baby and her mother almost get kicked out of a crowded movie theater? She yelled, "Pacifier!" Got you. The way to turn a frown upside down is to get Google for good news. I'm your correspondent, Hassani Olujimi, and I'll see you next time right here on That Saturday Show with more Good News.
It's always refreshing to get some good news, and thank you, Hassani, for that. Let's get back to our conversation.
We haven't had good news in a couple of weeks, so it's
Exactly.
really good to see it back.
I was ready to yell pacifier. I was. But let's look a little bit more at this mayor's race and this new school chief and what we've got there. So we've got so far 2 declared candidates. We've got Nick Bevins, who doesn't mind letting people know, first of all, that he's autistic. And I think that's a feather in his cap right away to be able to put that out there and let people know that even though he's got a disability, he has his eye on the ball. He was a strong supporter of Bernie Sanders in the presidential race and has begun to build a really good base for himself, apparently. And his focus is on transportation, housing, and on healthcare.
Yeah, and I like one of his campaign strategies. I've canvassed for a lot of different political candidates and stuff like that. And one of the interesting things that he wants to do is to go into the places that a lot of the canvassers don't go into. I mean, nobody even touches the International District, parts of the South Valley, and we need interpreters to help out there, to different apartment complexes, to parts of the West Side. I've seen demographic maps even with the Democratic Party. There are huge sections of the West Side that aren't even really incorporated. They don't have precinct chairs. They feel totally left out of the city. And one of the things he said he was going to do in his campaign is make sure that none of those areas go untouched, that people get brought into the voting process. I was a precinct chair on Nob Hill, and part of my district is Maxwell Housing that used to be base housing. Yeah. And because they're a gated community and they have a security guard, you can't even go in there and canvass. So that one area, everybody who lives in there now, it's not just military housing, but everybody who lives in there now is disenfranchised from solicitation of the voting process.
Wow. Yeah, that's the kind of thing we're talking about. And the other, when you look at a place like the International District, for example, that part of the city of Albuquerque has been a challenge that no one has really seriously wanted to take on for years. And I'm on a planning committee right now, and we've been meeting since last fall. The planning committee has come up with some remarkable, exciting, and right-on ideas in terms of how to make things different over there. And all the city wants us to do is keep talking. Just keep talking. Well, people have been talking for years. It's time for some action. There's some proposals that have been put out for funding. You can't even find $1 to support the kinds of things that people in the International District want. And that's a crime all by itself.
Yeah, I've been working with former City Councilor Ray Garduno on developing part of that area in the old Parkland Hills Shopping Center, which is a huge acreage. How many acres is that?
Oh, good grief. It must, I don't know, it's
14
like
acres or
14,
something
15
like-
acres.
Yeah, it's all torn down. We can build all sorts of offices and services for the homeless, for veterans, for people in the international district, business incubators, places where they can study for their GEDs and get help on how to do their finances and nutrition help for the families there, interpreters there, landlord-tenant hotlines. You know, most of that place is like all these fly-by-night slumlords that manage those apartments. And like you said on another show, you know, it's a dumping ground for prisoners from the police, for sex offenders, and you know, we have to get the youth involved and the people in the neighborhoods involved, and they can man those offices and those services for themselves, create their own jobs, and better everybody's lot in the international district.
Well, you touch on a real sore subject for me, and that is other people making decisions for us. Mm-hmm. You know, you never go to the source to ask for ideas, to ask for input. Everybody else outside of my community has a better idea in terms of how to do things than people within the community. And that's how you end up with programs that fail, because they're not born of the community that you want to place them in. So I keep harping on it. I always say, who asked you? Who asked you? And when I see a new program, I want to say, who asked you? And if the people in the neighborhood say nobody did, that program is doomed to fail. It really is.
Well, as far as taking direct action, you know, I think we should build those offices for those services right away. It's sort of like what the Kevin Costner film. If you build it, they will come. I have seen, like you're talking about, I've seen so many initiatives. The DA, the city. DA has the LEAD program and other programs where they want to get these $1 million grants and tell the international district how to do things. I've seen sustainability and groups from UNM and data crunchers coming in, offer advice to people in the international district, but they don't get really the people that live there together. And like you said, you know, we need to ask them, what do they want? How can we build their services and keep them safe from the inside out?
Exactly. You know.
And also, I've, you know, when I was on the Civilian Policing Council, I've gone to 2 meetings with the architect that City Councilor Pat Davis has brought in from that district. And, you know, there's been about 20 to 40 people in both of those meetings, and they've all offered ideas of how to use that space: gardens, police substations, building a bridge across San Mateo to unite the neighborhoods and use, there's about 4 acres on the other side where you can build a gym and community offices and things like that. But there's been tons of meetings, but no action has happened.
No action.
Meanwhile, like up in the Northeast Heights, City Councilor Brad Winter and other people built this huge North Domingo Baca community center with a gym that looks like Define Fitness and skateboard parks and basketball courts and all these different services and meeting halls. But they basically have that already in those neighborhoods. The international district is a severely impoverished neighborhood that needs all the help and services it can get.
And if you can put good quality services in there, people will begin to feel a lot better about their community and will begin to provide a lot more input in terms of what else can happen in order to make those communities better. I was approached several months ago by a possible developer on that very center that we're talking about at Parkland, and asked to submit the names of organizations that would bring critical services or that have a history of critical service in the international district. I gave them 9 agencies, complete with their missions and their visions and who to contact, and we're still waiting to see something happen there. That's pretty frightening.
And when I first got into this, I was president of my daughter's PTA at Whittier Elementary, and I was working with the PTA at Wilson Middle School. And one of the reasons we wanted that walking bridge up there, not only to unite the neighborhoods, but to have a safe path for the kids coming from the International District to Whittier and from the Ridgecrest Parkland Hills neighborhood to Wilson Middle School. You know, my daughter was part of a small minority from the Parkland Hills neighborhood that went to that school, but 80% of the kids that go to Whittier Elementary come from the International District.
That's amazing.
But they're on the other side of San Mateo in a completely different neighborhood.
Yeah,
and we need to unite those neighborhoods, not be afraid of each other.
That's right. That's right. I mean, we've got enough out here to make us afraid of one another without just where you live. That's just got to change. So we're just hoping, you know, when I look at Nick Bevins, you know, he's talking about improving transportation. One of the things, coming from a big urban center myself, one of the things I got excited about was he said that he wants to push for metro rail in this town. What a concept, to be able to get around town on a rail system.
Well, I've been pushing for light rail for 20 years, and I wanted to become an urban planner. I almost went to grad school at UNM for urban planning, but then I found out that basically when you break it down with city council and all these different committees and all these different influences, that there really isn't any urban planning per se in Albuquerque. It's basically developer sprawl.
Yeah.
And we have so many unused buildings, so many condemned buildings that could be torn down, repurposed properties, unused buildings used for the homeless. I mean, the city is crazy this way, and it's not really represented across the board. There's all sorts of different interests in different neighborhoods. There's regular media that caters to certain neighborhoods. There's, like we were talking about, there's a lot of neighborhoods that are not represented, and that's one of the reasons. You know, we were talking to Laura Dale was hosting our program last week, and she was talking about public access and community communications, and we need all neighborhoods represented. We need all activist groups, all community groups, all communities represented through whatever means of communication we can give them. And this is one means that we can give them: public access. Get your own shows, be on our shows, talk about your community issues. Albuquerque is a big place, and along with this TV show and public access, we've advocated a long time for low-powered FM station. They do have Radio Berkey out at RFK Charter High School that can be better used to serve everybody in underrepresented communities. And you know, we've even talked about starting up a bi-weekly publication at the Peace Center. I mean, news for the community. We have our own monthly newsletter, but we need any means of communication we can to let people know what's really going on in the community and how they can help and how everybody can work together at a grassroots level to make everything better for them. Like you were indicating before, our public education is like way down at the bottom of a lot of lists. There's a lot of kind of exciting things coming into town. You know, there's Netflix opportunities, there's Amazon opportunities, there's what do you want to call it? Let's call it a nice thing. There's Albuquerque wood. I don't want to call it taco wood. we have this huge budding film industry that's been here for a while that can provide a lot of jobs. We can, you know, if we switch along with the new green economy, New Mexico could power, if not the country, half of the world with solar farms, with wind farms. I mean, there's tons of opportunities out here. We need to restructure things so our communities grow and so our kids want to stay here, and so it can be a budding, thriving community instead of following, you know, ending up last place on everybody's list.
You know, industry is coming to Albuquerque like I've never seen it before. I mean, Orion. I don't even know what Orion is, but I understand that Orion is about to open here, and you've got so many other job opportunities opening up for people in Albuquerque. But I do remember about 3 years ago, I went to a seminar given by people representing various industries that said that one of the things that makes them hesitate about coming and investing in Albuquerque is that we have a lousy employment market here. People can't even fill out job applications properly. All right, school system, newsflash, you need to get on the job and begin to address these challenges. You take things out of the schools. Kids don't even learn how to write cursive anymore. So how are they going to sign a check or important document? You're taking analog clocks out of the schools. So if you give somebody a wristwatch, they won't even be able to tell time anymore. Stop dumbing down these kids and prepare them so that they are qualified to actually participate and reap the benefits of a decent education as industry does come here slowly but surely.
Well, you mentioned transportation, and for the poor, for the desperately poor, the people that want to work, that's been a big barrier to a lot of them. I mean, there's bus routes in here that take an hour to run to get 2 miles. The bus service has typically stopped here since I've been here for 40 years at about 11 o'clock at night. What if you want to work graveyard shift? What if you want to get a great job or a job like a baggage handler or something at the airport? How do you get out to the airport? There's no buses that run during those hours. We could employ a lot more people and give people much better opportunity if we spread out our transportation system, run it longer hours instead of hyping art and electric buses and stuff like that. That's great, but people have to get to work.
That's right. Art and that whole system that runs from nowhere to nowhere in the city is just insane. What a waste of money that was. Thank you, former Mayor Barry, who stuck us with the bag. That's what's got to happen. If you're going to be serious about making the city work and making it available for everybody, you've got to think about good transportation. I'm not going to give up on that metro rail, but even if you had decent buses and decent bus schedules, there are parts of this town that buses don't run to at all. And yet you've got thousands of people living there. You've got to do better. You've just got to do. And then there's that whole issue of housing. There are a few places around the country that have talked about, 99-year leases becoming available for city-owned facilities, city-owned properties, that people could actually begin to live in and pass those down from generation to generation. You stabilize your residents, you stabilize your housing stock that way when people know that they've got a home that they can come to, and when you got situations like this where people are still being faced with possible evictions, can I say absentee landlords who live in California and in Arizona? When people are faced with those evictions, there's something that the city can begin to do to blunt the effects of that kind of a problem.
And that's another initiative that the Peace Center is starting. We're working to set up a hotline for landlord-tenant issues and evictions. Our candidate for mayor, Manny Gonzalez, is probably itching right now to throw a bunch of people out of their houses on this eviction deadline. Is it still the 31st of this month?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and I've heard in Santa Fe, anywhere between 4,000 and 6,000 people face eviction.
That's right.
Yeah, so we need to set up whatever safety nets we can. We need to protect the homeless. We need to protect these people that are very vulnerable and on the edge. They've said before, most Americans live paycheck to paycheck. They can't afford something like a COVID catastrophe or a medical catastrophe. Put them right on the edge of living on the street. And like we said earlier, there's plenty of available spaces and houses that can be repurposed. We've got to do that. We've got to protect our citizens, and we've got to take care of our homeless population.
That's right. We've got to. And folks, whatever you do, we've got to work to see to it that the likes of Manny Gonzalez doesn't get a foothold on this city. We're talking about bringing fascism and racism and more police brutality into the city of Albuquerque if we give them a chance. We can't allow that to happen. I talk about firewalls every week. I'm going to keep talking about firewalls every week. And we're going to use, this bully pulpit that comes as a result of public access television to keep reminding you of what's going on. We're even hoping that at some point we can actually begin to get people out on the streets with a camera and a microphone and ask opinions. Who asked you? I want to get out in the street and ask people, what do you think about critical issues that affect our city, that affect our lives individually and collectively here? It just has to happen. We can't let things go the way they are.
Yeah, and if you have questions and concerns and you want to raise issues that we can bring up on the show, please call the Peace Center.
Please call the Peace Center. We're looking for your calls. We're looking for you to stop in and visit us sometimes. We've got time for you. Take some time for us as well. You'll be glad you did. So, we want to move on because last Saturday, March 13th, was the first anniversary First anniversary of the murder of Breonna Taylor. Yeah, I thought it was the second too. And I even put out the word that it was the second. Then I realized, I looked it up and I said, nope, it's only been 1 year, but it seems like an eternity since Breonna Taylor was murdered.
Wow, this pandemic, this daylight saving times.
It seems like it's been going on forever, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we did at the center was we pulled together probably about 40, maybe 50 people for a silent candlelight vigil, thanks to Tom Dent, who said, let's do this. Let's have a silent vigil to commemorate the memory of Breonna Taylor, murdered while she slept in her bed by police in Louisville, Kentucky. And it's such a disgusting story that follows that disgusting murder. Such a disgusting story where you've got the Attorney General of the state of Kentucky, and I hope everybody remembers this man if he decides to rear his ugly head and run for another office there or worse, who manipulated the grand jury in such a way that the grand jury could not even render a verdict against these murderous police officers. That's what we've got. That's what we're working against. And so we want to do everything we can to lift up Breonna Taylor's name and educate people here, because voices all over the country need to continue to put that name out there in the universe, along with George Floyd and L'Oreal Tsingene and so many others, Sandra Bland, and I can go on and name so many of these people who have been victims of police violence, and no justice has been rendered. That's the part that's disgusting.
And it's weird the way they set some of the stuff up. I mean, they're just in the process of selecting juries for George Floyd's case.
Yes.
But in the meantime, they've announced a $27 million settlement with his family, and they go like, oh, that's not going to influence the jurors. Well, yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, it is. $27 million sounds like a lot of money, but it doesn't bring Breonna Taylor back. It doesn't bring George Floyd back in this case. I think it was $12 million in Breonna's case, $27 million in George Floyd's case. And it's taking them forever just to seat a jury in the case of George Floyd. But people are watching. We encourage you to keep watching as well.
And that's kind of the same process that happened with Perez and Sandy with the James Boyd murder, and the way they stretched everything out and declared a mistrial and couldn't form a grand jury properly. So yeah, we need to. Everybody has to get on the ball on this. They have to do a real trial and bring real justice to these people.
We do. We're in a battle. We're in a battle to fight white supremacy, We're in a battle to make certain that our country is not taken over by fascists. Tucker Carlson and that ilk. We've got to continue to push against you. Why do people look at Fox News? It's disgusting. But that's the kind of thing that we've got to continue to work against here. We've really got to stay vigilant, stay woke, and don't let these things drag us in a direction we don't need to go. We really don't. Stay tuned to that Saturday show, because we're going to keep you informed and keep you on the edge of your seats with facts about what's going on in our city and facts about what's going on in our nation. Tom Dent, I'm glad that you were here today. We've had a great conversation.
Really?
Yes.
Talked about a lot of stuff.
Yes, we have. And so with that said, I think that we need to close out this show on a really upbeat note. Let's end with music.
Aren't you going to tell people about the artist?
Malamanya.
Oh, the artist now. I thought you were going to talk about the artist of her beautiful mural for Brianna and L'Oreal at the
All
Peace
right,
Center.
I'm going to cut in a little bit and give you just that. The mural and dedication to Breonna Taylor and Laureate Singene is going to be March 27th at the Peace and Justice Center. Nani Chacon is the artist. She'll be there for the dedication. All right?
At 12 o'clock, right?
12 o'clock noon.
All right.
All right? Let's go to Malamanya and have a great day, folks.
Me bailo varia cumbia, me bailo reggaetón, me bailaba salsa y un reggae, nunca se cansó. Me bailo varia cumbia, me bailo reggaetón, me bailaba salsa y un reggae, nunca se cansó, nunca se cansó, nunca se cansó, nunca se cansó. Bailando fuera con amigas, saliste bailando rico, papito, y muy suavecito, chiquito, solo te seguí el pasito, te invité a bailar, perdida en esos ojos negros, bailamos hasta el amanecer, bailábamos de para y pegadito, pero siempre muy juntito, solo te seguí el pasito, hasta madrugar. Me bailó varia cumbia, me bailó reggaetón, me bailaba salsa y un reggae, nunca se cansó. ¿Cómo? Me bailó varia cumbia, me bailó reggaetón, me bailaba salsa y un reggae, nunca se cansó, nunca se cansó, nunca se cansó, nunca se cansó. Chiquito, solo te seguí el pasito, te invité a bailar, perdida en esos ojos negros, bailamos hasta el amanecer, bailábamos de para y pegadito, pero siempre muy juntito, solo te seguí el pasito, hasta madrugar. Me bailó varia cumbia, me bailó reggaetón, me bailaba salsa y reggae, nunca se cansó. ¿Cómo? Me bailó varia cumbia, me bailó reggaetón, me bailaba salsa y reggae, nunca se cansó, nunca se cansó, nunca se cansó, nunca se cansó.
The first drum beat, a mother's heartbeat.
El primer tambor, latido de la madre.
Unconditional love pulses. as we grow,
Amor incondicional latiendo al crecer,
creating harmony, unity, and strength.
creando armonía, unidad, fortaleza.
Touch, beat, caress, the language of the drum.
Tocar, golpear, acariciar el lenguaje del tambor.
Remembering rhythms, dances, songs, prayers.
Recordando ritmos, danzas, cantos, rezos.
We now know we can do together what we can never do alone.
Lo sabemos. En comunión hacemos lo que nunca haremos solos.
This is our sweet bad habit.
Nuestra dulce mala maña.
This song honors Nina Simone. May her spirit live in us. See that woman, she drink coffee, she drink tea, then she go home. See life, see life, see life, see life, see life. See that woman, dressed in red, wear a rag around her head. See that woman, dressed in green, wear a silk stocking with golden fade. See that woman, dressed in white, sleep all day, then she fall all night. See that woman got a black dress on, $4,000 she can wear less more. See that woman dressed in red, make a man go and lose his head. She wiggle, wiggle, move like a cat. We get a man ain't gonna wink right back. She empty his pockets, wreck his days, make him love her, then she fly away. Empty his pockets, wreck his days, make him love her, then she fly away. See that woman. See that woman dressed in gold, going home, slap her soul. See that woman kneel and pray, lift up her head, she's free today. See that woman dressed in gold, going home, slap her soul. See that woman kneel and pray, lift up her head, you know she's free today. Oh, see that woman, lift up her head and pray. She knows she's free